Don't you dare.
Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon of Savage Reads and today I'm joined again by my mum.
I know, it's a return apparently. What was the phrase you just
Come
used?
back.
Come back!
But we're going to do our reading horizons, so what we have just read, what we are reading and what we're going to read next. Because mum was quite a hit last time. Don't want to give you an ego.
If I had an ego, I'd never cope with being with you, love.
Right, well this is lovely. She's not coming back. So, ladies first. What's the last book that you read?
The last book I read?
Yeah.
Okay, so the last book I read...
I'm quite nervous about this.
Don't know why he's nervous. Was The Hoarder by Jess Kidd.
And I've wanged on, that's the technical term, about this book since I read it, because I think it's brilliant.
And I think he's right.
Yay!
No, I thoroughly agree with you. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Because it's all about a young woman, and Maud is looking after, well, she's helping Cathal, who is a hoarder in a big house, where he's kind of secluded himself from the world, but has a secret going on that you learn slowly but surely. I don't want to spoil it. But then what I think is amazing is Maud has a secret herself, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's full of secrets.
But also she can see things that we can't. But she can see saints, and the saints are hilarious.
They are, they're fabulous. They are really... Saint Valentine in particular, I thought was a really clever portrayal. And yeah, there's some really comic moments. His body language, the saint's body language and things like that. Really
it's their knowingness as well. It's like they'll be judging her while she's having an interaction with someone.
Yeah.
There'll be a saint in the room just slowly judging her. But also, I think it's a very moving book in a lot of ways about both Maud's past, which we won't spoil, but also the situation that Cathal finds himself in.
Yeah, I think it's a real reflection on old age and how our society deals with old age without being remotely preachy, or it's just a really intelligent sort of reflection on what happens to people when they start to decline.
Yeah. I'm so pleased you liked it.
Yeah, no, I loved it.
I was quite nervous. I always get quite nervous when it's one that I've really loved.
I think she writes beautifully. I think her writing side... It was almost the case that she could have been writing about anything.
Oh.
And I would have enjoyed it. Because it's really rich.
Yeah, no,
language.
I found her last year. I feel like I discovered her last year when I read The Hoarder. Then I promptly went and read Himself, which is her first novel. And then I read Things in Jars, which is her third novel, which is coming out in April. And it's also very, very good. Because these are interesting because she focuses on sort of recent history. Like they're not set now, but they're set in the future. But actually in Things with Jars, she goes right back to the Victorian era. And she does Victorian brilliantly. So it's really, really good. And again, has that sort of... All of her novels have a supernatural twist, which I wouldn't on paper think would work for me. On paper, slightly ironic. But they do, every time there's a supernatural twist.
Well, because she's questioning it.
Yeah.
You know, she makes clairvoyancy plausible, and yet she's questioning it as well.
Because is it actually someone's psyche rather than actually those?
Yeah.
So, on to what I've just read. And it is Edward Lew, sorry I'm holding it wrong, Edward Lewis' The End of Eddie, which if you've seen my Reading Horizons with my friend Kerry, she recommended his latest novella, so I went to the beginning, and she was bang on because she was talking about how much she loved him for his, it was a breakout debut novel in France where it sold over 300,000 copies, and it looks at the working class and poverty in France, which hasn't really been looked at in this way before, but it's also the tale of a young boy called Eddie. It's very, very autobiographical. He grows up in a very working class family, very, very poor, but not as poor as some of the people around him, which really gives you a real perception on how bad some of the poverty is in France as you read on. But it's also him coming to terms with his own sexuality in working class, which you would assume is more welcoming and open, and actually is quite a lot worse than you would imagine. Okay. And the bits where he's getting bullied at school, not to get my violin out, but really reminded me of being bullied at school. And it's a horrible thing where, you know, when you read something and it really gets you. But it is also incredible. So I'd highly, highly, highly recommend that. So yeah.
See, I should be reading that because I'm going to France this afternoon.
Oh, she had to throw that one in, didn't she? As this goes live, she'll have been.
The French thing, because Layla Slimani as well, I've really got into. I know. She was on Channel 4 the other night, interviewed by Kirsty Walk. It was a really
how lovely for her.
Interesting interview. It was good.
No, I didn't like Lullaby at all. But, well, no, that's not true. I was expecting something from it, from what people were saying, the talk around it, that I didn't get. It was meant to be a psychological thriller, and it isn't. It's actually about class, which is fascinating. And that's my boy. You might like this actually.
Yeah.
So you might enjoy that. I haven't read Adele yet.
I have, and I thought it was.
I've heard it's filthy.
Fascinating. It is quite filthy, but also deeply fascinating. And I think she's a very, very bright, intelligent, thoughtful author, and saying some quite unusual things about women.
But I think it can be about how books are hyped or how books are sold, which I'll talk about with my next book. But what are you currently reading now?
So I am currently reading The Silent Companions. By Laura Purcell.
I think she's on Twitter as Spooky Laura.
Spooky.
Or Spooky Purcell or something
Laura.
like that.
Well, it is quite spooky.
Oh, the reason I've not read it is because everybody told me it gets terrifying.
Oh.
And so I didn't want to read it in dark nights in the winter.
I chose it because I'm on holiday. And it's a historical novel and it's set in a big old house.
Do you like big old house novels?
I do like big old house novels.
I didn't know that we have that in common.
I like historical novels. And there's a mystery, and it is spooky.
Is it about women who goes to go and give birth and has been shut away? Because they used to do that, didn't they?
Yeah, she's been widowed, and so she is sent off into the country to an old house which she's inherited through her husband's death.
Oh, okay.
The house has been really seriously neglected, and it's quite. It starts off, you're seeing things through her perspective. So she's sort of, even her arrival at the house is clumsy because the carriage gets stuck in mud and she ends
up... I think of the favourite.
Yeah, actually, in a way, yes. Yes, because she has to get out of the carriage and she gets covered in mud. And so, she can't even greet the servants when she gets there and she's the new mistress. So it's a, I wouldn't say a bodice ripper, but it's a rip-roaring read.
Is it a romp?
It's a romp. It's
like
definitely a romp with a sort of edgy side to it.
The new one, speaking of bodices, is called The Corset, and it's also spooky,
okay.
and may be eligible for the Women's Prize.
Oh, okay.
So who knows, we may start, because me and Mum are going to, if we don't read the long list together, we're definitely going to read the short list together.
Yeah.
She's promised.
It's
on
really
camera.
Looking forward to it. It's exciting.
Oh, quote from the author of your favourite book.
Well, yes.
Terrific, perfect setting, great build-up, chilling. What more could you want? Susan Hill, author of The Woman in Black, which my mum loves. Anyway, moving on to what I'm currently reading. I'm a whole 6 pages into this. This is Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James, who won the Booker Prize with the 7 killings. No, yes, A Brief History of 7 Killings. Couldn't remember the title there. Which looks around, an attempted assassination on Bob Marley. Yeah. I thought it was really good. I thought in the middle it was a little bit padded. I felt like he could have got to stuff quicker.
Okay.
And it is one of the most beautiful books, and they've gone to absolute town, because when you take the cover off, it's still that beautiful.
Oh, that's nice.
It's really, really lovely. Now, speaking about hype books, this is one of the most hyped books I've seen in a long time. I've never seen a book so much on Instagram ever, partly because it's so pretty. It's the first of his trilogy of novels, which are going to be called the Dark Star Trilogy. And they are a retelling of African myth and follow. It starts off with the death of a child, and I think everything's going to change from then on. That's what I'm assuming. But he's gone from writing these history novels, and after winning the Man Booker, he felt he was free enough.
So I'm a bit nervous that book's going to hit me in the face.
Because he's holding them up all the time as a professional. After winning the Booker, he felt certain freedom. He also won the Green Carnation Prize, which I co-founded. But I think after winning the Booker, he felt he had that freedom to write whatever he really, really wanted to. And he's a massive fan of comics and graphic novels. I think this is going to be his fantasy trilogy, but around African myths and legends, which I find really exciting. So that's what I'm reading. What are you going to read next on your holiday?
Well, again, it's the holidays, and for some reason I wanted to douse myself in a bit of history. I don't know whether
you're doing some serious Victorian lit there, aren't
you?
I know,
and I don't know whether it's because I'm sort of envisioning it. I know Versailles isn't Victorian, but it's that whole thought of swanning around these places.
She's going to Paris. I don't know if she's meant to.
It always makes me want to read something historical for some reason. And this is by Emma Donoghue, who I'm sure a lot of you will know wrote The Room, which I really enjoyed. But I actually picked up a collection of her short stories a few years ago from a charity shop and absolutely loved them. I preferred them to The Room. The one I read was called Astray.
Yeah, it's the one where she takes photos and newspaper cuttings.
Yeah, so she looks at historical documents and uses them as stimuli for short stories. And I think this novel is actually based on a similar premise. I think it's a a document that she found, a historical document that she's then spun a novel out of. I don't know any more about it.
I know that Jen and Jean both love her short story collection Kiss the Witch, which is her feminist and slightly, I think, queer twist on fairy tales, all the famous fairy tales.
Okay.
But I read Astray and I thought it was really clever how she did take these little bits of...
Yeah.
And there's another one that she did, which is also sort of between Astray and between Kiss the Witch, which is The Woman Who Gave Birth to Rabbits. It's a short story collection, and that's based on, she went and found all these ridiculous, not possible stories from Victorian times that people claim to do, like the woman who said she gave birth to 6 rabbits, and then writes those as...
I mean, they're on a par. My favourite short story writer, as Simon knows, is Carys Davis. I think she is just the master of the short story for certainly our generation. And Emma Donohue's stories, I feel, give her a run for their money.
Yeah. I've mentioned Carys Davis recently when I did my favourite books of all time so far video, which I'll link down below, so if you've missed it you can see it. I'm going to read a book next that you've read already, and I actually started and then stopped because I started it when I was in America, but then realised I actually had to read the whole shortlist for the Mum Booker TV show, so I put it down. But it is The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This is the American edition, which is a classical myth retelling, and that's all I really know about it, because I'm not as on classics as I should be, despite the fact that my mother is a classicist. But you raved about this.
I loved it. I adored it.
You said this is one of your favourite retellings.
It is, yeah, it is.
Why?
Because I think it's a really interesting angle. So she retells it from the perspective of one of Achilles' captured slaves, and she's the slave who is at the centre of the argument, which sparks the story in the Iliad, the argument between Achilles and Agamemnon, and changes the course of the Trojan War.
Oh.
And the women in the Iliad are not quite silent, but almost. It's a very sort of male-dominated world, as you can imagine, because it's very early on in European history. And I thought it was a very brave and clever thing to do, to take this female perspective. And I was a bit cynical about it because these women are so silent.
I can't imagine you being cynical, mother.
But I thought it's a beautiful story in its own right. But for somebody, so I'm absolutely convinced you don't need to know anything about classics to appreciate the story. And I think that's really clever. But also, if you are a classicist, I think that the light she sheds on some of the ideas in Homer and in the classical world are really clever. So, for example, the relationship between Achilles and his mother, who is a demigoddess.
Who I now think of.
She brings the sea into the story in a way which is really beautiful and interesting.
I always think of her now from Madeline Miller's Song Killers, which we won't talk about right now, Mum. I don't want to start a row. But because it's the gravel of her voice that Madeline Miller writes about. When how water runs through gravel. Yeah. That's how her voice is, and forevermore I will remember as
that's
that.
Interesting.
And I thought that was brilliant. Anyway, but
it doesn't sentimentalise or glamorise at all either.
Oh, that's good.
There's there's a rawness to it. Yeah.
Well, I'm also reading this as well, or the reason I'm going to read it next is because I'm fairly certain, I could be completely wrong obviously, that this will be on the Women's Prize long list.
In
which case, we'll both be one ahead, at least.
Let's see if he's right.
Okay. Let's see. But my video of that may have already gone live actually, of my guessing. It may have gone live before this goes live. I can't remember what order I'm doing videos in at the moment. Thank you for coming back, Mum.
Thank you for having me back.
She'll be back again. Can't keep her away. She'll be back again when we do some videos around the women's shortlist, which it won't be when we're in Italy, because I don't think the shortlist has been announced by then, but we may have read some of the long list together by then. Yeah. But you'll see her over the next few weeks and months anyway. So it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
And I also forgot to say, if you've read any of these, do leave comments down below and we'll have a chat with you about them. Well, I will. Mum might not work out how to use the comments. She might not. But yeah. Anyway, bye again.
Bye.